Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that entire cities have disappeared beneath the ocean overnight, swallowed without warning, without explanation, leaving only silence where millions once lived. No war caused this. No armies clashed, no bombs fell, no borders were crossed. The destruction came from something far quieter and far harder to fight against. No asteroid struck our planet either. No fireball tore through the sky. No impact shook the ground. The danger was already here, rising slowly beneath our feet. And no alien invasion arrived from beyond the stars. There were no ships in the sky, no warnings from space, only the ocean, quietly doing what oceans do. Just water. Quiet, patient, relentless water, rising inch by inch, year after year, until the world we once knew simply wasn't there anymore. Scientists say that if every glacier and ice sheet on Earth melted completely, global sea levels could rise by roughly 230 feet, an almost unimaginable transformation of our planet. That's more than enough to redraw the world map forever, erasing coastlines, swallowing nations, and forcing humanity to imagine a completely different version of Earth. Welcome back to Oceanic Frontier, the channel where we dive into ocean mysteries and deep sea secrets. Today, we're exploring one of the most terrifying what-if scenarios ever imagined. So how much ice is actually sitting on our planet right now? The number is far larger than most people could ever picture in their minds. Honestly, the answer is almost unimaginable. We're not talking about a few frozen lakes. We're talking about an amount of ice that could reshape the entire planet. Earth currently holds nearly 24 million cubic kilometers of ice, locked away in glacier and ice sheets, an almost incomprehensible volume of frozen fresh water. Roughly 90% of all that ice sits in Antarctica alone, frozen solid across a continent nearly twice the size of Australia. And Greenland holds nearly all the rest, its massive ice sheet stretching for hundreds of thousands of square miles across the Arctic. If every bit of that ice melted completely, scientists estimate our oceans would rise by approximately 70 meters, reshaping every coastline on Earth. To put that into perspective, that's a wall of water taller than a 20-story building, rising slowly but unstoppably over everything in its path. Entire coastlines around the world would simply disappear beneath the waves, vanishing from maps that have stayed the same for centuries. And the first victims of this transformation would be our greatest cities, the very places where human civilization has thrived closest to the sea. New York City would begin to drown first, its streets and subways slowly filling with seawater as the Atlantic Ocean pushes further inland. Wall Street, the beating heart of the global economy, would disappear beneath the waves, its towers standing silent in rising water. The Statue of Liberty, a symbol recognized around the world, would end up standing in the open sea, half submerged and utterly alone. Large parts of London would vanish as well, with centuries of history along the Thames swallowed by the rising tide. Miami wouldn't even try to fight the ocean. It would simply disappear, since most of Florida sits only a few meters above sea level. The Netherlands, a country that has spent centuries engineering its way around water, would finally lose its long battle against the sea. Shanghai, one of the largest and busiest cities on Earth, would face absolute catastrophe as floodwaters overwhelm its streets and skyscrapers. But it wouldn't stop at cities. Entire nations would disappear completely, wiped off the map along with everything their people ever built. The Maldives, a beautiful chain of low-lying islands, would be gone entirely, its beaches and villages lost beneath the waves forever. Tuvalu, a tiny Pacific island nation, would vanish just as completely, its entire population forced to find a new place to call home. And Kiribati would disappear right along with it, another proud nation erased from the world simply because the ocean rose too high. Millions of people across these regions would become climate refugees overnight, forced to abandon everything they've ever known in search of higher ground. And that raises a difficult question no country has ever truly had to answer. What happens when a nation loses every inch of its land? The entire world map, the one hanging on classroom walls everywhere, would be completely transformed into something almost unrecognizable to us today. North America would look completely different, with the eastern coastline pushed far inland and huge stretches of familiar land simply gone. Europe would lose enormous areas of land too, with entire regions along its western and northern coasts disappearing beneath the sea. But Asia would face the greatest human impact of all, home to more coastal megacities than any other continent on Earth. Hundreds of millions of people across Asia alone would need to relocate, triggering a humanitarian crisis unlike anything in recorded history. Nearly half of all humanity currently lives near a coastline, which means nearly half the planet's population would be directly affected by this change. If the oceans truly rose by 70 meters, billions of people worldwide would have no choice but to move inland, away from the rising water. This would trigger the largest migration in human history, dwarfing every refugee crisis and mass relocation the world has ever witnessed before. Entire megacities would need to be rebuilt from scratch, further inland, at a cost that's almost impossible to calculate or even imagine. And the social consequences of this migration could be just as devastating as the flooding itself, straining nations, resources, and relationships between people. Here's something many people forget. The world's economy is deeply connected to the coast, with trade and commerce built almost entirely around the sea. Most of the world's major shipping ports sit right at sea level, built there deliberately for easy access to ocean-going vessels. Now imagine every single one of those ports completely underwater, unable to send or receive a single ship, container, or cargo load again. New York's entire financial district, home to trillions of dollars in daily transactions, would simply be gone, lost beneath the rising Atlantic. Shanghai's massive shipping ports, some of the busiest on the planet, would disappear as well, crippling trade routes across all of Asia. Singapore, a tiny but incredibly powerful trading nation, would face an uncertain future as its low-lying land slips beneath the waves. Global trade as we know it would essentially collapse overnight, with supply chains broken and international commerce thrown into complete chaos. Insurance systems around the world could fail entirely, unable to cope with the sheer scale of property loss and destruction. Property markets everywhere would crash simultaneously as coastal real estate, once some of the most valuable land on Earth, becomes worthless. And entire industries built around coastal regions could disappear completely, from tourism and fishing to shipping and manufacturing. But rising seas wouldn't be the only problem humanity would face. The effects would ripple far beyond just flooded coastlines. The oceans themselves would fundamentally change, their chemistry, temperature, and behavior shifting in ways scientists are still working to fully understand. Massive amounts of fresh water from melted ice would pour into the oceans, diluting salt water on a scale never before seen. This sudden influx of fresh water could seriously disrupt the planet's great ocean currents, the invisible rivers that move heat around the globe. These powerful currents help regulate Earth's climate, carrying warmth from the equator toward the poles and back again in a constant cycle. Without these currents functioning properly, some regions of the world could actually become dramatically colder, not warmer, despite global warming. Meanwhile, other regions could become far hotter and drier than ever before, as weather patterns shift in unpredictable and extreme new directions. Rainfall patterns across the entire planet would shift dramatically, bringing floods to places that used to be dry, and drought to places that used to be wet. Agriculture could be disrupted worldwide as a result, threatening food supplies for billions of people who depend on stable, predictable growing seasons. Here's the strange irony: a warming world could actually make some places noticeably colder, a paradox that surprises most people at first. So, after everything we've just described, could all of this actually happen to our planet in the way we've imagined? The good news is, not anytime soon. This isn't a disaster waiting to strike tomorrow, or even within most of our lifetimes. Melting every glacier and ice sheet on Earth completely would likely take hundreds, if not thousands, of years to fully happen. We won't wake up tomorrow morning to find our cities suddenly underwater. This kind of change unfolds far more slowly than that. But sea levels are already rising right now, measurably, year after year, as global temperatures continue to climb steadily higher. Scientists have measured a clear and increasing rate of ice loss in both Greenland and Antarctica over the past several decades. Both Greenland and Antarctica are visibly changing, with satellite data showing glacier retreating faster than researchers predicted just years ago. Coastal flooding during high tides is already becoming far more common in low-lying cities across the world, even without any dramatic ice melt. The future we're describing isn't some sudden Hollywood disaster movie moment. There's no single catastrophic event that flips a switch overnight. Instead, it's a slow transformation happening gradually over many generations, one small measurable change stacking quietly on top of another. And honestly, that slow pace makes this issue even more important to pay attention to, not less, despite how it might feel. Because slow, gradual changes are incredibly easy for people to ignore day to day, since nothing dramatic seems to be happening right now. But eventually, one day, these slow changes become completely impossible to ignore any longer, once they've already reshaped entire coastlines. The encouraging part of this story is that humanity has always proven to be remarkably, incredibly adaptable in the face of enormous challenges. Throughout history, we've crossed vast, dangerous oceans in nothing more than wooden ships, driven by curiosity and the will to explore. We've built thriving, modern cities in the middle of some of the harshest deserts on Earth, defying conditions nature never intended for us. We even found a way to walk on the surface of the moon, an achievement that once seemed like pure science fiction. And just as we've done throughout our entire history, we can absolutely learn to adapt to a changing coastline once again. Right now, scientists around the world are already preparing for this future, building models and studying exactly how our planet is changing. New, more advanced flood defenses are actively being designed and tested in coastal cities that are already at the greatest risk today. Many cities are already redesigning their infrastructure entirely, planning for a future where higher water levels are simply part of daily life. Advanced climate models are improving significantly every single year, giving scientists far better tools to predict exactly what comes next. Make no mistake, the challenge ahead of us truly is enormous, requiring cooperation, investment, and innovation on a truly global scale. But time and time again, humanity has proven that it can overcome even the most enormous challenges when we're forced to face them. The truth is, the future hasn't been written yet. Nothing about this outcome is set in stone or completely unavoidable. The choices humanity makes today, right now, will directly shape exactly what our coastlines and cities look like tomorrow and beyond. Beneath everything we've discussed, it's worth remembering that our oceans are, above all else, truly beautiful in ways words can barely capture. They remain deeply mysterious too, with more of the ocean floor still unmapped than the surface of the moon itself. And they are, without question, incredibly powerful, capable of reshaping continents, driving weather systems, and sustaining life across the entire planet. In fact, it was the ocean that gave birth to life itself, billions of years ago, in its ancient, primordial waters. And one day, in one form or another, the ocean may reshape the world once again, just as it has done many times before. If all the ice on Earth truly melted, civilization as we currently know it would genuinely never be the same again. Familiar, beloved cities that took centuries to build would simply disappear beneath the waves, becoming little more than distant memories. Entire countries, with their own histories, cultures, and governments, would vanish completely from the world map forever. Billions of people would be forced to move, leaving behind homes, communities, and entire ways of life built along the coast. and humanity as a whole would face one of the single greatest challenges it has ever encountered in its entire history. But after everything we've explored today, perhaps the biggest and most important lesson of all comes down to just this one idea. Our planet is far more fragile than most of us tend to realize in our everyday, ordinary lives. And at the same time, it's also far more deeply interconnected than most people ever stop to consider. Because the fate of a single glacier, thousands of miles away from where you're sitting right now, matters more than you might think. That distant glacier can eventually change the streets outside your own home, no matter how far away it seems today. The story of our planet's future is still very much being written, one decision and 1 year at a time. And every single generation, including yours, will play a part in helping to write exactly how that story unfolds. The choices we all make today, big and small, genuinely matter for the world future generations will inherit from us. At the end of the day, the oceans connect every single one of us, no matter where on Earth we happen to live. And their future, whatever it turns out to be, remains permanently and inseparably tied to our own future as well. Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating and sometimes unsettling journey into Earth's possible future together with us today. If you enjoyed diving into this documentary and found it as thought-provoking as we did, we'd genuinely love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and join the growing oceanic frontier community of ocean explorers. And until our very next adventure together, keep exploring the endless mysteries that lie just beyond the horizon.